all, I want to thank Firefly for putting me on so early, because I can now enjoy the day once this is over with. So thanks, Ben, appreciate that. My name's Clive Norman. I'm from St Mary's School in Shaftesbury. If you want to, if you find anything of use in this, it's technically a website, so it's available on that bit.ly link, FF demonstration. Feel free to grab it if it's of any use, any of the stuff in there. We've been using Firefly for about 2 years, and we've done a few bits and bobs. Luckily, a fair amount of what I'm going to demonstrate is the structured data viewer, so that was quite handy actually. Slight panic there when you said that we're going to demonstrate what you're talking about. So yeah, and I've been asked to just go through a few bits. So moving on. This to me is actually quite an important point. I'm not an academic, and the reason I say that is that this modern web world that we now work in is open to everybody, and I don't think it's always been like that. There are so many resources out on the internet. You've got Khan Academy, Code Academy. I'm taking my 10-year-old son through Code Academy now, and it's great. You know, you've got podcasts, YouTube, all sorts. And if someone's got the enthusiasm to do this, they can do that. It's a much more open environment and an open world, and I for one, really welcome that. So that's just a bit of a soapbox point there, but I quite like it. I work at St Mary's School in Shaftesbury, as I said. It's great. I really enjoy it. I feel very privileged to have this job. We have a head and an SMT who is fully behind ICT. It's changing, but I don't see that in every school, I have to say. And it's a little bit death by 1,000 cuts, as I call it, where somebody doesn't invest in the technologies and also the personnel, crucially, I think, and then 2 years down the line they're wondering why they're sort of behind everybody. So I feel very lucky that our school does value, you know, my boss is on SMT, you know, it's fully represented. For what it's worth, I blog and I tweet under the name Norman Solutions. It's not a company, it's just a brand I used. It would be nice to have said Norman, but a chap by the name of William with a bit more history than me seems to have more dominance. So I go under Norman Solutions, and that's it. That's about me. So our Firefly developer experience really falls into 2 categories so far. We've got the client side, which, as Joe was saying, is where we've used the structured data viewer a lot. And this is where we're sort of using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And as it has been said, JavaScript is the assembly language of the web. You might not agree with that, that might upset a few people, but to be honest, it is out there and it's everywhere and it's very, very powerful. It's on the server now with Node.js. You've got front-end MVC frameworks, you've got AngularJS, Ember, obviously got jQuery. I did my first semi-serious AngularJS project a couple of weeks ago. I did it over a couple of weekends. I cried several times, I will admit. It's a horrible, horrible experience in some ways, but it's fantastic in others. The result, trust me, I'm talking, I've got 5% of experience here. I mean, I'm not an AngularJS expert in any way. But the result was a real sort of almost desktop kind of feeling app. You know, there are no page refreshes. No, it's really good. If it's something that you're interested in, I do recommend it. And server side, we've done a few elements of server side stuff. I won't go into all we've done, but hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate where we've posted back to our MIS, which was quite useful, and I'll be able to demonstrate some of that again using the structured the component viewer. It might not be the most recommended route, but it's what we've done, and it's worked very well. Okay. This is always a controversial one. I actually quite believe in what I call the beg, borrow, manipulate principle. And to borrow a phrase, a more well-known phrase, if you give me Notepad, you're going to have to feed me code. If you give me Notepad and the internet, I'll learn to code myself. And I'm not saying you go out and you just copy and paste code. That's clearly a very, very bad thing, because quite crucially, you know, you've got to understand what it does. But there are so, you know, going back to my original point, there are so many resources out there, and sometimes you just might not understand the syntax of something, you may not understand the best approach, and I make use a lot of taking people's blog posts and sort of articles and, as I say, understanding what it's doing, but principally using that to go forward. Now, without the aid of safety net, I'm going to try and do some live copying and pasting. I'm not brave enough to do live coding, but I'll let you into a little secret here. Last night at 10 o'clock, I thought I'd better just run through this and make sure this is working okay. I did this, and for reasons which I'm still a little bit lost on, the bloody thing didn't work. So it just goes to prove that God does have a sense of humour. So if this doesn't work, then I've actually got a screencast video that I did of it, and I'll prove that I have done it in the past. So anyway, basically, the reason why I want to go with this, I'm just going to open up our VLE. Okay, that's the first failure. Okay, after the first hurdle, I managed to log in. Right, okay. So, what I'm just going to basically do is I'm just going to copy this small snippet of HTML here. And I'm just going to go into the code editor on here. Paste that in there. Grab this small snippet of JavaScript. There's a reason behind this, which will hopefully make sense in a minute. Okay, it's working. It's working. I'm going now. Right. What this is basically doing, this is calling out to the BBC's API. BBC have got some really nice APIs. And it's basically looking, it looks better actually when it's slightly wider, I will admit. But anyway, it's going out and it's picking up all of the upcoming programs to do with science and nature. And it's displaying them. And we've got a nice little bit of sort of animation there, the CSS3 animation, spinning around and what have you. My point is that by just putting a little bit of code in, this page is real, it's live, it's dynamic, it's not static. This will change every time maybe not every time someone looks at it, but as someone looks at it frequently, it's going to change. And you know, I like that. I like that ability of quite easily being able to make something a little bit more fresh and a little bit more dynamic. Yeah, we could extend that so that when, you know, someone clicked on that, maybe it sent a notification to the IT department to stick that program on eStream or ClickView or something, whatever. You get the idea. You can sort of you can work with that. Now, to be fair, there's a couple of little elements in there that are beyond what that code was. There's actually, I'm using the Moment.js library, which actually presents time in a much more easily readable format. But to be honest, I've just got that in the page. I didn't want to sort of go through all of that. But principally, that was just those two pieces of code, and that was it. I'm also hanging on to the Firefly classes, so hopefully, if this does what I think, when we sort of render it, we're also getting responsive design. So it's all laying out as well. I'm hooking into the Firefly's responsive design patterns, as it were. So now, to give you another demonstration of where we've used that, I actually did a blog post on this. Feel free to go and look at it if you like. I also grabbed some data that's coming in from, I can't remember the resource, I do apologise, but it's an earthquake resource, data resource. It tells you all the earthquakes that have just happened in the last 24 hours, and it plots them on Google Maps, basically. Again, it's live, you know, it's there, it changes. And these also hyperlink, so if we go to there, it takes you directly to that particular instance, you know. It's again just a demonstration of how you can, you know, sort of quite easily actually make pages a lot more a lot more alive and a lot more interesting. There's another one that we also did where we're querying. I've got to be a little bit careful when I click on it here, because this is obviously our live site. Well, I'll click on myself. Down here on the bottom right hand side, I've actually got a query that's actually polling the hits table on Firefly, and it's sending back some JSON basically, which then basically displays who's online. As I said, there's a blog post that I did that sort of explains how, because it's a little bit tricky to get the hits table to perform a bit better, but principally it just shows you there, and that's polling every 10 seconds to do that. And if I click on that, it should technically take me to the profile of that user. So again, it's just making things a little bit more funky and a bit more useful, really. So I've demonstrated the earthquakes in the online section, so I'll move on from there. Does go quicker when you're presenting, doesn't it? Okay, we use Schoolbase as our MIS system, and we have done for a long time. I think, to be fair, we were their second school. And we've built some forms of interaction between Schoolbase and Firefly. The areas that I'll probably go to is the registration and our parent portal. Again, luckily it's following in the same pattern as what we've been looking at this morning. Our registration, the slight problem that we had, and I'm not going to get into a knocking of Schoolbase, because I've got a lot of time for Schoolbase. As I said, we've been with them many years. My personal opinion is that they don't always design the most prettiest looking thing. And we had a problem with their online registration in the sense that the staff really couldn't use their web version of it. So we took it as a bit of a challenge, and what we did is we created, again using the data component, we created this online registration. And what this is basically doing, it's sort of in the same way that I think Chris was saying, we're pulling data in from our MIS system. This display is using a jQuery plugin called jQuery Data Tables, I think. It's a fantastic plugin, I have to say. If you've got a table and you want a table to look nice and have all sorts of searching and filtering built in, Data Tables is very, very good. It's quite highly respected as well. It's not a badly written plugin or anything like that. And this is basically, this is live. This is our registration. And I've got a few sort of, I'll have to remember what I did here, otherwise I might mark people in this afternoon that aren't there. But if I sort of want to mark them all as present, it just pulls them down. It's not saving that yet, I'll come to that in a second. I can clear, and the third one, to be honest, it's not going to make any difference here, but the third one copies the previous column. So if somebody has set an AM, you don't want to have to go through and do PM. I mean, of course, you've clearly got the individual options as well. Once you've done that, I didn't change anything there, did I, before I click save? I'm sure that's how it looks. If you click on save, you get a nice little toast message at the top saying saved, and that will error back. If it didn't work, you'd get an error one as well. So it's and that, I have to say, we did that about 6 or 7 months ago, and we've had requests for changes. In fact, the marking the same as the previous column was indeed one of those requests. But we've had no real issues with it. It's just used every day by all our staff on iPads. That's the other thing. We've written a little bit of logic in there that, again, not only follows the responsive design, but more crucially, if you're on a mobile, it actually gets rid of everything that's not relevant other than the current day. So literally, that's like a mobile equivalent view. Just using a bit of JavaScript, we hide everything else. And as far as I'm aware, it works. We've certainly not had any issues, and no one has screamed that the register's not been taken. So that was something that was using the sort of ability to pull something back, but it's got that nice little extra bit that it also posts back to our database as well. And in the same sort of way, I'm going to log into our parent portal. I'm going to do it in a different browser just in case I don't screw up the session or something. I've been given permission. This is our head's login, which I've granted myself permission to, so okay. This is our parent portal, and again, it's pulling information in from our MIS. I don't know if you noticed, the first time you log on, it brings up the little toast message at the top saying these are how many unread new documents you have, and you know, we've got this counter here as well. That was actually quite important to us because with our old system, one of the main problems is people didn't know whether they'd read a message or not, and we got lots of requests from saying, well, yeah, you've given me 50 letters, and I don't know what one I was on now, you know. So well, we thought, well, we'll see if we can give something on that. And if I actually click on this, what I'm going to get is a list of all of the documents, the postings, that are specific to this parent, by the way. These are not just all postings. These are all held in the appropriate tagging lists in our school-based system. So this is only that has been targeted to this parent. And crucially, you have this option down here to say mark it as archive. And as I click on them, there's several things going on here. You can clearly see that it's obviously greying out. I don't know if you noticed, the number's also decreasing. Actually, crucially, on this instance, we haven't got a save button. I felt it was probably better to try and do this purely by an AJAX call. So as they literally click on that tick box, that is posting back into the database that is now read. And just to prove that point, famous last words, but just to prove that point, if I now go back to the page, which is a complete page refresh, it's now downsized it to 50. So that's proving that that's writing back to the database, because this is clearly a page refresh, which is obviously reloading everything back in. We were quite chuffed with that. There was a bit of work that went behind that, but we were quite pleased with that. And I have to say, we have had really few issues with the parent portal. And I equally have to say, previously, I couldn't have said that. We had lots of issues. Not in the sense that they were particularly technical issues, just people not knowing how to drive it, you know. Very rarely do we get anybody. I had one last week, which I must admit I thought was quite amusing, because he didn't know where to find his daughter's report. The fact that there was a big sort of, well, maybe not big, but a red arrow jumping up and down on the right-hand side of the screen. What was also quite amusing is I sent him a very, very nice email back explaining I understand these things are very frustrating. I wasn't patronising in any way, shape or form, I promise. And I said, you know, that this is where it is, you know, if there's anything we can do to help. And I haven't heard a dicky bird back. So I think it says it all, really, the fact that he probably looked at it and thought, oh, yeah, okay, there's a big arrow there, isn't there? So that's what we've done with our parent portal. Okay. Just a couple of example plugins that we've used. This is by no means the only ones, and you know, well, these are what we've used there. Toaster. Toaster is the plugin that gives the little toast messages. Guy John Pupper develops it. It's great JavaScript guy. Really nice, really small, really nice, well-built plugin, and very, very easy to use. Data tables, I've already mentioned that. Again, these are hyperlinks, so if you ever want to go to this slideshow, which I said is online, you can click on these, they'll take you there. And as I said, Moment.js. Moment.js is fantastic for dealing with times. It just takes the work out of having examples of APIs that we've used. You saw me using the BBC one, you saw me using the Google Maps one, and that's the earthquake one. USGS, whatever it stands for. Anyway, but actually pretty much anyone who's happy to send you JSON over the wire, it will work with. You know, that's what's so great about this modern world we're living in. There are so many APIs out there that will send you JSON, and just to clarify, JSON is a JavaScript form of data transfer. It's like a JavaScript version of XML, if you like. And if they send that to you, you can then use client-side technologies to enumerate through that and present pretty graphs and what have you. I'm a great podcast listener. Again, this almost goes a bit full circle to my initial point that you don't need to be a serious academic to get this stuff. I've got a dog, I walk a dog regularly every week, and this is what I listen to when I'm walking the dog. And actually, I do pretty much listen to every single one of those. Hanselman is actually my favourite, a guy called Scott Hanselman. They're all there. They're all linked, feel free, some of them. Shop Talk Show is a great front-end one. They only concentrate on CSS, JavaScript, HTML. That's a great one. And then you get Software Engineering Radio, which sometimes loses me, to be honest, but I listen to it anyway. And that's the sort of podcast that I listen to. And that's my presentation. So hopefully you might have been able to take something away. As I said, that's my Twitter, that's my blog, and the FF demonstration is the bit.ly link if you want to go and grab this at any time. So thanks for your time. Who's next?
Does anyone have any questions for Clive?
Oh yeah, go on then, yeah. I wasn't banking on that.